for joining us. I'm Diane Rehm. Governor Rick Scott recently vetoed a bill that would have effectively ended lifetime alimony in Florida. A similar measure took effect in Massachusetts last year. Comparable bills are pending in New Jersey, Connecticut, and Oregon. Joining me to talk about the purpose of alimony, how it's awarded, and whether it should be changed, Cheryl Lynn Hepfer, past president of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, and Ann Sunt, a retired circuit court judge, joining us from a studio in San Francisco, activist and author Warren Farrell. Good morning, all.
Good morning, Diane.
Good morning.
Good morning. To have you with us. Before we begin our conversation here in the studio and with you, Warren Farrell, we're joined by phone from Milwaukee, Wisconsin by Judith McMullen. She's professor of law at Marquette University. Good morning, Judith.
Hi, Diane.
I'd appreciate getting some basic statistics here. For example, the percentage of American marriages that end in divorce today. Give us that figure.
The figure you usually hear is 50%. That's 50% of first marriages. The rate tends to go up a bit with second and third marriages. Second marriages somewhere in the 60s, third marriages somewhere in the 70s.
Wow.
And there's some difference in demographic groups. The rate of divorce has been dropping slightly among college-educated partners, for example.
And the percentage of divorcing spouses who receive alimony?
That varies a lot from state to state. It's been going down over time nationally. So, for example, in the early part of the 20th century, very early in the 20th century, maybe around 9 or 10% of divorces had permanent alimony. By around 1950, the rate was about 25% of divorces getting some alimony, but the range was huge. It was from, there's only one or two studies, it ranged from like 7% in Florida to 48% in Kansas.
I see.
Now it's much less. Now it's closer to, depending on the state you're in. In Wisconsin, I did a study in 2005, and it was 8% alimony, about 11% if you counted a hybrid form of alimony that we have here.
And how many states have actually ended permanent alimony?
By statute, only a handful of them. You mentioned Massachusetts. Texas has greatly limited it to hardship cases. Kansas and Utah have not abolished alimony per se, but they have put time limits on it. So permanent alimony's gone. You can go into court and ask for modifications later if some hardship comes up. But I should say that a lot of states have de facto limited alimony by simply applying it mainly in situations that include hardship, that include where people need rehabilitation, basically.
I see. And is alimony still primarily going to women?
Yes. In the study that we did in Wisconsin in 2005, there were 64 cases in our sample that got alimony. Only 2 of them were husbands getting alimony. There's probably, theoretically, alimony statutes are gender neutral. There's probably still some social prejudice against it. Wives probably make the claims more. And it's a changing landscape because there are more stay-at-home dads than there used to be.
Judith McMullen, she's professor of law at Marquette University. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And turning to you now, Cheryl Hepfer, why the push by more states to end lifetime alimony?
I think that there have been some changes in the way we function as a society over recent years. More women are joining the workforce, although I will tell you that the 2011 U.S. Census Bureau report indicated that women earned 77 cents to every dollar a man earns. And it's very interesting that even in categories that we would think of typically as being careers for women, like nursing, actually pursuant to that same U.S. Census Bureau report, male nurses earned $60,700 per year, whereas women earned $51,100 a year. But I believe that there is significant incentive on the part of young women to secure an education. We know that more women are completing their college educations than men now. And I think young women want to be financially independent. So there is certainly a move culturally and in society for women to be more financially independent than they had been in my mother's years and in my grandmother's years. And I believe that we've also seen a significant change in the number of women staying home when their children are young. And now we see some men actually sharing in those responsibilities.
Yeah.
So I think that there have been some significant changes in our society recently.
Sherilyn Hepfer, she's past president of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. She is a family law attorney practicing in Bethesda, Maryland. Turning to you, Ann Sant, as a retired circuit court judge, talk about the purpose of alimony and why it is that more and more women are paying alimony today.
Well, the purpose of alimony has radically changed. It changed by a legislative fiat back in 1980 because the governor commissioned a group to study alimony. And previous to that, it really was a gender sort of thing. It was an amount being paid to women. And I think it was based on assumptions that have changed radically. The assumptions for 200 years from the 1700s were that women didn't work and that they were entitled. They had a right to be supported by their spouses. And as Cheryl commented, all of that has changed. I think I was probably part of the last generation of women who had choices. We liked the idea of a career, but it wasn't required of us. There was still that idea that you would be taken care of by your spouse. So those assumptions now have changed, and the new alimony statute, which is now about 35 years old, really says right up front, we expect people to be self-supporting. And the purpose of alimony really is to enable people to be more self-supporting. And we'll give you a limited amount of time if you need training, if you need education. Hence that really pejorative word rehabilitative alimony, like you need to be cured or straightened out. But the concept is we'll help you make that transition from a family, two people working together, to two single separate lives. But we expect you to be self-supporting.
And she's a retired circuit court judge. Turning to you, Warren Farrell, do you believe that an alimony award should have a fixed termination date?
I think that it's probably helpful to have a guideline of about 10 to 15 years. I do think there is a purpose to alimony. I don't think permanent alimony is really a useful concept, and it usually tends to in gender entitlement. But I think that we're going to be seeing, and just to give a little bit of clarifying comments to a few things that have been said, nationwide it's 4% of alimony goes to men, 3.6% in more precise terms. And but women earn about 20% of the time. Women who earn more than their husbands do in marriages, and 38% of the time when both sexes work, the women earn more. But alimony is still a fairly gendered thing. And the reform in alimony will really be the reform of second wives fighting with first wives, or women who are earning more than men. Men have, for a long period of time, accepted alimony as sort of part of the cost of love, a little bit like diamonds and drinks and dinners and dates and flowers and Valentine's Day. They're all sort of the cost of love that men have learned. Is part of the process. But so men are not fighting that nearly as strongly as second wives will be fighting that, and that women earning more than men will be fighting that. And so that's, I think, the part of that transition. On the issue of the genders earning $1 versus 76 cents, this is one of the most destructive to women statistics and most erroneous pieces of information that we believe. For example, in the nurse's case.
Warren, we've got
Sorry.
to take a short break here.
Sure.
So we'll talk more about your views on that disparity in earning when we come back.